Please accept promotion to panelist.
All right, we are live on PEG, Facebook, and YouTube.
Thank you to Water Quality Wednesday here. It's April 13th, 2022. We will get started here in just a few seconds. So once again, this is Water Quality Wednesday. Today we're going to be talking about private drinking water systems on Clear Lake, and we'll get started here in just a few seconds. Thank you. All right. Okay, I think we'll get started. Welcome to Water Quality Wednesday. It's April 13th, 2022. Today's Water Quality Wednesday will be about private drinking water systems on Clear Lake. My name is Angela De Palma Dow. I also write the Lady of the Lake column in the Lake County News. I work for County of Lake in the Water Resource Department. I'm an invasive species program coordinator, and I also manage a lot of our surface water quality programs. And I'm really excited about outreach and information sharing with the public. And so I started Water Quality Wednesday so we can get some of this vital water information out there. And I'm really excited that you guys attended today. So a few things we'll go through here. Introductions, I'll have a slide at the end where our speaker, introducing our speakers. We have a great team from CalWatch today. I'm really excited for the information they're going to be sharing from some research over the last year. Some Zoom webinar reminders. Just want to remind you guys that there will be a period at the end for question and answer. So we'll have a good 15, 20 minutes for some discussion after the presentation. There will be a Q&A chat box. So if you're on the Zoom webinar, there's a little chat box at the bottom. You can go ahead and put any questions or comments you have there, and we'll make sure to get to them by the end, at the end question answer session. And I really want to give a shout out to those helping us present today, Sam Houston, who is doing all the technological heavy lifting here, getting this information out right now live on YouTube at County of Lake, or County of Lake Facebook live streaming. It'll be up on the County of Lake YouTube channel later, and it's also streamed on PEG TV, Mediacom Channel 8. So thank you, Sam, for that. There is nothing live yet on YouTube. It will be posted on YouTube in a bit. You want to go to Facebook County of Lake. All right, this meeting is being recorded, and it will be available also on the Water Quality or Water Resource Department website. And again, we'll also share this on our County of Lake Facebook at Lake County Water, as long as also with all the other Water Quality Wednesdays that we have. And then very important, we want to know how we're doing and how we can improve and how best we can make Water Quality Wednesday work for you. And so we do have an evaluation, and we'll put this link into the chat at the end. So any of you guys that are on Zoom webinar can go ahead to that link and be able to write a review evaluation. Let us know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see maybe on future Water Quality Wednesdays. And just a reminder that Water Quality Wednesdays are open, accessible forum to share information, because there's a lot that's going out here on the lake. And so we want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, if there's opportunities to be involved, and just to learn more and share that information. And really the goal here is to demystify lake and water science, and particularly so we can know who the people are, the places, the programs and the projects that are all going on around the lake that we care so much about here in Lake County. And this is important because we all play a part in protecting these valuable aquatic systems. Whether we realize it or not, we do all play a part, and knowing what's going on really helps us achieve this goal. And I do want to send out an acknowledgement to the original caretakers of Clear Lake. The indigenous original caretakers here, the Pomo, acknowledge this land of them, and that they really took care of this resource for thousands of years. And Clear Lake was known as Big Water, pronounced Hobbiton, Ahokata, and Pomo. And this is a quick reminder about today. We're talking about private drinking water systems, so we are not talking about large public commercial drinking water systems. An example of those is at right. Here at the bottom right, we have a water supply distribution system where we have source water. It looks like a pool, but let's say that's Clear Lake, and it goes to a treatment plant, and then there's some storage tanks. You know, in the Midwest, the storage tanks are really tall. We're lucky here in Lake County, we have elevation. We can put the storage tanks up on some hills, some mountains, and then the water is distributed to neighborhoods and large communities. And all these systems are regulated and they're monitored. And if you're wondering if you are on one of these systems, there is a great map on Tracking California. And what you can do is you can go there and you could enter your address or zoom in to where your house might be. And then you can see what municipal water system or large private commercial system is treating your water. And if you're in an area that is not in one of these blue outline areas, then maybe you have a private individual, a very small system. And that will be the focus of today's talk. And usually these systems are not regulated and not monitored by a state or county agency. And so that's the focus for today's talk. And so those systems are like this image here on the bottom on the left, where you have the lake water source. There's an intake that goes right into the lake. It comes out maybe into a little house, a little pump house, or a little area where there's a filtration system that has a pump, disinfection, and that goes straight into your home or maybe a couple of neighbors' homes, and then that provides the water there. So the talk today is going to be really relevant to this kind of system. If you are interested in learning about larger public commercial drinking water systems, we had a whole Water Quality Wednesday about that too. And that was in September 1st, so that's available online. You can find it on our website really easy. If you go to Water Resources, there's a Clear Lake tab under the Cyanobacteria tab. This is kind of what the page looks like here. You scroll all the way to the bottom, and that is what pops up is you'll see the video link straight. It's embedded for the YouTube for this Water Quality Wednesday, where we talk about cyanotoxins and treatment systems for those large public treatment systems that you may be on. So just a reminder today as we're going through for this. Okay, I'm going to introduce your CalWatch team and some of your speakers today, and then they will take over the presentation and they will introduce themselves as they go through their presentation today. So from Tracking California, we have Susan Policonis, David Chang, and Isadora Nogueira. In Public Health Institute, we have Gina Solomon. From the California Water Board's Drinking Water Division, Amy Little. And then from Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians, Rancheria, Environmental EPA there, we have Sarah Ryan. So these are all the speakers for your CalWatch team today. We're really excited to have them on and share their information with us of all the information they've gathered from the past year. They are going to be working on this project this coming year. So they're going to be gathering more information, and maybe we'll have them back for another Water Quality Wednesday after their project is over in a year or so. So with that, I will stop my share and turn it over to Susan. I want to check in with my tech and make sure there's no issues on their end. I'm going to stop my video. Great. So we see Susan. She's going to share her screen. Awesome. That looks great, Susan. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Angela. I think I can speak for our whole team, and our team is much larger, and we'll talk about some of the other folks, but then the folks that Angela just introduced. We are super excited to be here today. This is a presentation that we've been talking about giving since we originally got the funding to do this work, and so it's a big day for all of us. And thanks to everyone who's here listening in. So Angela just went through the introductions, and you'll hear more from each of us as we go along. It's my job this evening to talk, just sort of give the broad strokes picture of what this project is, what the problem with harmful algal blooms is at Clear Lake. I think a lot of the folks listening in are going to be familiar with that, but we'll just kind of talk about some background, and then let some of the other team members get into some of the specifics. So CalWatch stands for California Water Assessment of Toxins for Community Health. It's a great acronym. We're all very attached to it. And it is a 5-year grant from the CDC with a number of different components and a number of different activities, and I'll talk about some of those in the next slides. But the main focus is really looking at self-supplied water systems, and so that's the term that we're using to describe water systems like Angela was just describing that are not part of the public water system, not something that you're paying a monthly bill for, but for residences that are drawing water themselves, either directly from the lake or from a well that's near the lake. And we'll be talking about harmful algal blooms as well, and the way that they impact drinking water, as well as the way that they impact life and health and all kinds of things around Clear Lake. So this project is a partnership between a whole bunch of folks, many of whom you'll hear from tonight. The team at Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians, Tracking California, my organization, which is a partnership between the Public Health Institute and the State Department of Public Health. We have team members from the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment, and Amy, who you'll hear from the State Water Resources Control Board. And so we have four main types of activities that we're doing as part of this evening. So one is supporting the Big Valley team in what they've been doing all along. I'm going to turn my video off, which is to keep track of not only the algal blooms, which they've been doing intensively since 2009, but also keep track of illnesses, both human and animal illnesses that come up that may be because of exposure to some of the blooms that we're seeing on the lake, or the toxins that come with those blooms. Another one of our activities is to provide more information to the folks who live around the lake, as well as to visitors to the area, about the impact of these blooms. And we often call them HABs, for short for harmful algal blooms. Another one of our activities is to identify homes that are not on public water systems, and Angela just showed some great examples of the mapping that we did to try and figure out who lives in those homes that are not on public water systems that may be receiving water directly from the lake or from a nearshore well. So that was one of our big tasks in year one, and we identified almost 500 homes that are not connected to public water systems. And then for the residents of those homes who are interested in working with us, our other activity was to test the water, and that'll be a big part of what we talk about this evening, is the water testing and the results of that testing, what we found. So let me just do a couple of slides on harmful algal blooms, on HABs, for folks who may not be as familiar with it. And I have to say, I am not the expert here. Sarah Ryan and her team at Big Valley have been doing this for a very long time. They really have developed an incredible knowledge base around what's happening in the lake, in particular around the harmful algal blooms. These organisms are not new. They are tremendously old, millions, probably billions of years old. And they've been in Clear Lake for a long time. It's been, there's some historical reports. Certainly people who have lived around the lake for a long time have noticed that they were there for a very long time. But starting in around 2009, folks began to notice that they were getting more common, lasting longer. There were smells that were coming with them. They were starting to have a lot of real impacts. And so at that point, that's when Big Valley started to really start paying attention, some of the other tribes in the areas as well, and start doing a lot of the work that they're doing. And Sarah will be talking about that when we get to her slides. So one of the questions that we often get asked when we're doing this work is, why are they increasing? What's happening? And the three primary drivers, at least this is what seems to be happening, are drought. And clearly you're seeing that in this year and the last couple of years, with lower water levels. The temperature of the water is naturally going to warm, and there's less flow. And so you're going to be seeing more blooms there. Warming temperatures overall, of course, also warms the water. And there are nutrients being added to the lake, in particular fertilizers that may be coming from different agricultural operations. The impacts that we see, we focus a lot, our team, on illness, and as I said, both human and animal illness. For humans, what we typically see are milder reactions, depends on what the toxin is that people have been exposed to or the bloom itself. People can have allergic reactions to the bloom material, to mist coming off the bloom, or they can, if they ingest it while they're swimming, they can have some gastrointestinal upset, some other effects as well. For animal impacts, we often see, I don't want to say typically, but we often see more severe impacts. Dogs in particular are very likely to be impacted in a more severe species of cyanobacteria they've been exposed to. But we do see dog deaths every year around the state. And it is something of concern that, that we like to share information on. Certainly, you know, the blooms and the smell and the sort of visual thing that goes along with them causes economic impacts as well. It would be great to be able to avoid them altogether, but it's very hard to get rid of the blooms once they've started. And then finally, a big impact that we're seeing and what we'll be talking about most of today is the impact on drinking water. And my last slide is just a little bit about what you can do. If you see a bloom, even if you think it's well known, you're welcome to report it. There's a public reporting portal that's part of the State Water Resources Control Board. The link is here, and we can also post that link in the chat. This is also where you go to report an illness. So when you're reporting what you're seeing in the bloom, there's a box that you can check whether there's been an illness that's associated with it. And if you check that box, one of our team or one of the Water Resources Board team will follow up with you. It's also a really good idea to avoid swimming in the area where you see swallowing the water, those kinds of things. It's also true for your pets as well, and maybe livestock. And then finally, it's really helpful to control the runoff of water off your property, in particular if you use fertilizers or have a septic tank. And so drainage matters here. That's definitely feeding some of this problem. So I'm going to stop there and turn it over to David and Isadora to talk about a survey that we did as a part of the work at CalWatch. And I will go ahead and advance the slides for you, David and Isadora.
Susan. Hi, everybody. This is David Chang. I'm a project coordinator at Tracking California. And last summer, we conducted a survey around Clear Lake. It was a combination of paper surveys as well as an online survey. So we did a big push. We were collecting paper surveys at a farmer's market, also around the lake perimeter. We were at a local park. And then there was also a big push via radio and social media to try and get the word out about the survey. And the purpose of the survey was really to try to understand how people are using the lake, both residents and visitors, if they encounter HABs, what they do in those situations, and also to really try and understand how we could maybe potentially change information, get education out, inform people about signage and things like that, just trying to get an understanding of how people understand HABs and different signs that they see. So we got a total of 412 different responses. Majority of the responses were female. Roughly 60% were seniors, 55 years and older. Good news is that 94% of respondents were aware of HABs in Clear Lake. 64% of the respondents, they lived in Clear Lake full time. A big majority of folks had experienced a health issue related to HABs, and we'll talk about the symptoms a little bit later of what people were encountering. And then there was also close to 40% of respondents that had pets or livestock that reported symptoms potentially related to HABs as well. In terms of different activities that folks mentioned doing on or near Clear Lake in the summer and the fall, a big portion of folks mentioned that they are doing boating activities. That includes kayaking, canoeing, driving a motorized boat. Less people swim or wade in the lake as well. And then we also wanted to know about different types of actions that people take if they learn about HABs. So most people keep their children away from the lake when they see scum, and also their pets. 40%, roughly 40% said that they would avoid all water contact, and 27% said that they go to a different part of the lake than planned, and 26% said that they avoid all water contact if the water looks really bad. Next slide. We also asked how activities had changed over time since due to HABs. A lot of folks again mentioned that they don't go into the water if there's any algae. People don't allow their pets or dogs go onto the beach, or they don't let their dogs swim in the lake. Some folks have mentioned fishing less and stop eating fish from the lake. They take extra measures to wash their hands and clean the fish really well. A lot of folks travel to other lakes. Those mentioned were Blue Lakes, Berryessa, Hidden Valley. Some people no longer do boating on the lake. Some people have moved away completely, or they've gone to other parts of the lake that they know are HABs aren't that are deeper, right? And also, I think some folks have mentioned no longer hosting gatherings, inviting people to their residences to visit as well. Next slide. Isadora, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you, David. So we also asked about health, human health impacts and animal health impacts. So we got a total of 334 responses for the whether you or someone in your household has had issues potentially related to HABs. The most common response was red itchy skin and sore throat, followed by earache, coughing, diarrhea or vomiting, stomach ache, skin hives, and agitation were the least common. And then for their pets, the two by far most common symptoms potentially related to HABs were diarrhea and vomiting, followed by weakness, breathing difficulties, changing in behavior, etc. And there were a couple of deaths that were potentially reported as being potentially related to HABs in the lake. Next slide, please. So again, as David mentioned, one of the purposes was to find out how information about HABs on Clear Lake could be improved. So we asked where people were getting their information from. So the most common way that people are finding out about HABs, according to the survey, is just through observation. Roughly more than half said that that was their way of finding out about HABs, followed by advisory signs, word of mouth, the Big Valley website, and Lake County Agency. We also asked how HABs could be improved, and over half of the people who responded said that it would be helpful to have public alerts on HABs. So that's an interesting area to explore. And then other people also asked for additional information and more frequent reminders. But then when asked about their preferred method to be notified, the most common response was to be notified through social media, which was interesting, followed by a county press release, email, and signs at Clear Lake. The least some people also chose the option of having hazard flags and newspaper. And interestingly, the preferred method for phone alerts was only 28%, but it does seem like over half of people want that to be an option for notification. Although we got a good level of response to this survey, there are communities that weren't reached. For example, almost all of our surveys were in English, 336, 4 were in Spanish, 1 was in Mandarin, and 1 was done through audio. So we have, some room there to do outreach to foreign language speaking communities. And then we also, 98% of the people who responded eat less than meals from the lake, fish from the lake less than once a week or never. So doing some outreach to subsistence farmers on the lake would also be helpful. And those are the findings overall. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Ryan. I'm the Environmental Director for the Big Valley Band of Pomo Indians, and I'm going to do the next several slides. We were really happy to be a part of this project because of the work that we're already doing on the lake for cyanotoxin monitoring and just water quality in general. So Big Valley does monitor the lake frequently, basically every other week from spring to fall, and have been doing that since 2014. This is a project we started with the Elam Indian Colony. And we also, with this program, we've been investigating illness reports that may be due to HABs exposure. So we are taking, going after water samples and doing microscopy on the water whenever we get an illness report that gets fronted to us. And then, of course, we have a Facebook page called Clear Lake Water Quality where we put a lot of information. And we are also putting it on Big Valley's website at bvrancheria.com. And we work with local communities to share information, state and local agencies, so that they're kept updated with the toxin information that we have. Next slide, please.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you. So to move us into what this project looked like for us, we had several staff. That's a great picture of Alfred there. Those who are participants for our first year might have seen Alfred out there. We've also, since last summer, have had Alex Tyler. So both of them were out in the field and going to the homes and getting water samples. And we started to also accumulate quite a bit of information about all of our participants in terms of their treatment levels and the water quality in the area. And we wanted to collect information about these homes' water treatment so that we could better understand what the results meant in terms of treatment. Next slide, please. So as Susan mentioned at the beginning, this is a multi-year grant. The first year we focused on the intakes and wells, nearshore wells of Clear Lake. So we did quite a bit of, in terms of mapping and shoreline visits, identified, as Susan said, almost 500 homes that were not hooked to public water systems that were on the lake. So we did reach out to all these folks, sent questionnaires or sent postcards and mailings to them, and just reached out to them, did a lot of social media to have them participate. We then, over the course of a year, went by their homes and sampled for nitrates, coliform bacteria, herbicides, if there were herbicides used on the lake near their intakes or wells, and also cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins. We did cyanotoxins a couple of times over the summer, and so we're going to be talking a little bit about those results. Next slide, please. So here is a very busy table, and Amy is actually going to go into a little more detail about what this means with at her slides. But you can see the kind of distinct columns for bacteria and nitrates, and we've broken it down into the different types of treatment that people had in their homes. So for the intakes, those who had pipes directly into the lake, there were various types of treatment that they had, and we sampled at their tap after this treatment. So you can see that even if someone had chlorine filter and UV, there were 2 homes that we tested that had that. We did not have any bacteria detects or nitrates detects, but for those who had only chlorine and filter, 54% of them had coliform bacteria detects and 8% of them had E. coli detects. So there's the bacteria and nitrates results for both intakes and wells. And then you can see an herbicides column where we did test 11 homes for herbicides that were used on the lake. And there was a herbicide detect at one of those homes. So it's basically 17% had an herbicide in their tap water. And then the final columns are about cyanobacteria and cyanotoxins. Not only did we test for cyanotoxins, but we also looked under the microscope at their water for the tap water for cyanobacteria, and in many cases we are finding intact cyanobacteria, and this was after chlorination and filtration of various kinds. Even in a few cases, folks had an RO system. So you can see that there was quite a vulnerability for, especially for the intakes in the types of contaminants that we were testing for. Next slide, please. And because we also conduct, the tribe also conducts recreational monitoring, basically cyanotoxin monitoring on the shoreline and also in the interior of the lake and in a few locations with the participation of UC Davis and also County of Lake Water Resources with Angela. We're able to get water samples from the interior of the lake from them, and then we also have our shoreline monitoring. And we are seeing, just from our shoreline monitoring, quite a bit of cyanobacteria. On the right side, you can see what it looks like under the microscope, what that bloom was on the left. So 2021, we had quite a difficult year, as many of you know. And so because we had that information, it was able to also help us with the intake and drinking water testing that we were doing. So we were able to see water quality from both sides. Okay, next slide, please. And actually in 2021, if you look at this map of the lake, these are our most frequent sites that we go monitor our recreational monitoring. So this is not the drinking water monitoring, but the recreational, just shoreline monitoring. And you can see that in the Oaks and lower arms of Clear Lake that there were danger levels. The most frequent toxin level for microcystin, which is a liver toxin, was at the danger level according to the suggested action levels of the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. So when we started to see these types of issues, water quality issues, we did reach out to the county and said, you know, we have participants who have what we think are vulnerable systems, because we're already seeing E. coli and nitrates and coliform earlier in the season, and we're concerned with these really high toxin levels that we're seeing on the lake. And so, you know, we were having conversations about that, and there was some action that was taken. I'll go into that in just a moment. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we were even seeing intact cyanobacteria in folks' tap water. So those are pictures right there of some of the microscopy we did of the tap water. And as I've kind of listed here, you know, we are seeing various genera of cyanobacteria. Different cyanobacteria can produce different types of toxins. They don't always produce toxins. You really don't know until you send it off for toxin analysis. So we did find out of the 36 homes that we tested in the summer that 20 had detectable microcystin, that's a liver toxin, in them, with 13 homes having toxin levels above the US EPA health advisory of 0.3 micrograms per liter. And we had one home that was an order of magnitude higher than the EPA health advisory. And of course, this last summer, we were seeing quite a bit, you know, extremely high toxin levels for microcystin, the highest that we've seen in our years of sampling. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we started reaching out to the county when we were seeing these high ambient levels in the lake. We already knew the vulnerabilities of our participants. The Health Services Department of the County of Lake responded with their acting or interim public health officer, and were able to do a public health advisory that encouraged people who lived in the lower and Oaks arms of Clear Lake, who are on these self-supplied systems, to not drink the water coming to their homes, but instead to use alternate sources of water that were set up by 2 of the public water systems on the lake. So they had some taps that people could go fill up their drinking water. And this health advisory was in place for those homes from the middle of September to the middle of November, and then it ended after the lake conditions started to improve. Next slide, please. And I'd like to pass this on to Amy Little. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amy Little, and I'm a water resource control engineer with the State Water Resources Control Board, Division of Drinking Water Safer Rural Solutions Unit. I'm grateful for this effort, and it's an enormous privilege to look at this comprehensive data set put together by this team. I bring the regulator perspective on what I see in the data shared And let's start with some terms and definitions. There are regulated public water systems, which include systems that serve 25 or more people 60 days of the year. Approximately 44,000 people rely on those systems in Clear Lake. 17 public water systems draw from surface water and are required to follow the California surface water treatment rule. Then there are approximately 493 self-supplied systems in Clear Lake, which are unregulated drinking water treatment systems with fewer than 5 connections. And then next, a few industry terms that are out there, including in-home treatment or under the sink or point of use treatment. And the industry also refers to outside home treatment as point of entry, if you see that out there. Next slide. A number of acute contaminants were sampled during this project, including bacteria, nitrate, and cyanotoxins. This table shows the public health threshold and recommended actions to take if they are detected in the case for bacteria or exceeded for chemical contaminants for a public water system. For example, if nitrate is greater than 10 milligrams per liter, it is recommended a water system take immediate action to notify customers to not drink or boil the water. And if there are multiple contaminants present from this table, use the more restrictive do not drink, do not boil action. Next slide. There's some caveats looking at this data. The results shared today represent a snapshot in time. It does not describe a comprehensive ongoing monitoring effort. And there are not any general treatment recommendations available for self-supplied systems at this time. And an absence of bacteria or contaminant does not imply that this is recommended treatment. Next slide. So what treatment is out there? Based on the information collected, there was a wide variety of treatment approaches. This slide shows the typical treatment system installed for the 35 intake participants combined. While sodium hypochlorite, or bleach, was not always before a filtration system, most of them were configured this way. 80% of the treatment systems had sodium hypochlorite injection, and 97% had some sort of filter in place. There was a wide variety of treatment after the bleach and filter, which included 4 basic categories. The blue houses indicate in this diagram additional treatment in the home, while the orange homes did not have additional treatment in the home. The blue circles represent additional treatment outside the home and could include treatment like carbon filters or ultraviolet treatment. From this diagram, you can see it was pretty evenly spread between the different combinations. For example, in the top home case, 11% of the homes had treatment in the home, but no additional treatment outside of the home. Next slide. First, a look at disinfection for these systems. There are 3 parts of disinfection in the surface water treatment rule, one of which includes maintaining a detectable disinfectant residual. Of the 35 intake participants, only 7.7% of those applying bleach had a detectable residual. 25% of the groundwater systems had a detectable disinfectant residual. Next slide. Next, according to a 2006 EPA guidance document for point of use, point of entry treatment, in addition to having a certified device meet standards, it is important that an in-home treatment system is free of any bacteriological activity. This picture, specifically to the right, shows the CalWatch results for bacteriological activity at the tap. For the in-home treatment systems, approximately 50% of the samples showed the presence of total coliform, while the homes without treatment had 27% and 72% total coliform, and E. coli was present at 1 home in each category. I'm on the nitrate. Sorry. Keep going down after bacteriological. Yeah, thanks. There was a total of 53 nitrate samples collected, with 35 of them at the intakes and 18 of them at the wells. There were no nitrates detected at the intakes. There were no nitrates above the public health threshold for well participants. However, 56% of the samples detected nitrate, with 1 sample above 50% of the public health threshold. At this level, a public water system will need to increase their monitoring quarterly. Next slide, please.
Hey, Amy, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Sorry. There's some background noise. Can you just mute and unmute really fast? And then, thank you. Okay, now unmute.
Sure.
Okay, and then yes. Okay, I think that fixed it. Thank you. I'll let you know if you need to do that again. That's a lot better because we could see your lips moving but not hear anything. Okay, so that's great. Okay, continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Angela. There were 28 samples collected to evaluate treated tap water for cyanotoxin, more specifically microcystins, during November 2021. Based on a summary of those results, the homes without treatment systems, or the orange homes, had detections above 0.3 micrograms per liter for microcystin, measuring up to that, as Sarah indicated, the 3.85 micrograms per liter. Based on microscopy performed during the summer, even some of the homes with treatment systems had the presence of cyanobacteria cells after treatment. Treatment for cyanobacteria can be incredibly complex. Next slide, please. So what does treatment look like at a public water system? Well, this is just a brief glimpse of what treatment can look like. You know, certified personnel, complex treatment systems, intense monitoring, equipped with alarms, routine inspections, source water quality, and more is monitored to anticipate treatment shifts, adapting and optimizing treatment, maintaining equipment, and planning for future regulations. Next slide. So based on the results, the SAFER program would like to, for those interested, support consolidations and public water system partnerships in this region. If you're an unregulated self-supplied system, there are 2 projects underway in the region. The first project is in the southwest portion of the lower arm along Point Lakeview Road between Lobo Point and Canocti Vista Drive / Anderson Road. If you're in this region, you want to reach out to Susan Willis of GHD, and I've got her phone number there. The second project is in the south of the Oaks Arm, along Windflower Peninsula, along North Drive and the shoreline. And there is potential grant funding available to connect to a public water system, and we're interested in hearing from you. So if you want to go ahead and reach out by email, that's great. And then there's also another outreach tool, and it sounds like it's similar to the one that Angela had mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. And then next slide. We wanted to equip you with some resources. You want to be sure that the device you're using will meet your needs. You want to be sure that the device will reduce contaminants as stated on the packaging or advertisements. The goal of the State of California Water Treatment Device Registration Program is to ensure that devices sold in California have been independently evaluated and tested to reduce health-related contaminants as claimed by the packaging. Also, treatment system maintenance is really important, and Imperial County shares their experience, and we've included a link here. And I can drop that in the chat later. And then finally, if there are bacteriological issues, CDC guidelines are available at this link. And then I'll turn it back over to Susan.
Thank you so much, Amy. Just so many fantastic resources. I just want to finish up with a few acknowledgements. Some of the other team members whose voices you haven't heard here today. Gina Solomon is also with us, one of the PIs of the project, and will be answering questions. And I actually think a lot of these folks on this slide are in our audience as well, and so can help answer some of the questions that we may have. And I think that concludes our slide deck, and so we'll turn it back over to Angela.
Thank you so much. Thanks for that presentation. That was great information. I am going to share my last 2 slides here right now. And then I do have a few questions for the group, and hopefully we can have some nice discussion on these. So I did get some questions coming in from the audience. One was asking how they can improve their water quality directly around their own property, like on their docks, and if they're allowed to add oxygenators. I'll let the group respond to that, but I will say that yes, from a county perspective, as far as what's allowed and regulated around the shoreline, that you have a private dock, you can install a oxygenator. There's also things called water movers. So an oxygenator is actually pushing oxygen in or taking air out from somewhere and putting it in the water. Whereas a water mover just has a little motor underwater and pushes the water. Some of those activities can improve local water quality. So the oxygenator actually adds oxygen, which creates a better environment for beneficials that we want in the water. And then the water mover actually creates a physical agitation that it makes it hard for cyanobacteria and particularly to establish. So those are some things you can do. There's various products out there. I would just, caution anything with electricity around the water to be careful of, and then lock it down. If people see something looks cool, they might take it. And then also just what you want to do is once you start it, you have to start it early. Putting it in there in the middle of August when you already have those big mats or it's really thick and green doesn't do much when it comes to trying to aerate the water. You already have the problem. So if you're going to get aerators or water movers, start them now. And then make sure you have a backup power system, because once that water mover goes off again, if it's the middle of August, that neighbor's cyanobacteria mats and stuff is going to come right in. So if you have an intake, like a private intake into your lake, and you want to put a little water mover there off your dock by right above your intake or something like that, that's a great solution. We at the county would love to know if you're doing that, just so we can track. Maybe we can go out and do some samples of DO and just see how it's working. So if it's something that we can incorporate more in local ordinances or ideas for other folks, we would just like to know about that activity so we can see how it's working and perhaps collect some data for you. But I will let, looks like Sarah Ryan's there if you want to answer that. I know you guys have had some of these aeration projects in Big Valley Marina that work pretty well. So we'll let you comment on that.
Yeah, thanks, Angela. And just a couple things. One is, in terms of improving the water quality, if you have an intake into the lake, the larger, the public water systems, especially with the drought, we're getting some projects together and some funding together to move extend their lines into the lake, because the more that your lines are pulling from, or your intake is pulling from a really shallow part of the shoreline, you're just going to get water that's just that much more challenging. I do know that some of our participants actually were engaged in moving their systems or their intakes a little bit further out to try to improve things. Yes, also just in terms of, access to the water for recreation or cultural activities or any of those things, we have been using aerators on Big Valley's shoreline for a number of years. We also do a lot of tule replanting and really try to have an active management of what's going on with the soils and just the shoreline. And the aeration does seem to be helping in terms of limiting the amount of blooms that we're having on our shoreline.
Great, thank you. The other question was looking for a source online about that has a list of basically some of your results. So you guys did sample a lot of potential contaminants, and if there's a place to see some of those results for what's there. I think also this person was asking about maybe in general contaminants in the lake outside of cyanobacteria, and if there's a source for that, where someone can find information.
Angela, I had a quick follow-up with that. So we do have
yes.
the fact sheet, but I think because I'm not the host, I can't put it in the chat. So I just wondered if there was a way that maybe one of the hosts could drop it in there. I don't want to take up too much time. The other thing folks can do is email us at that email address that we've put in. It's info@trackingcalifornia.org. And we can share the fact sheet and some other information as well.
And that question about just contaminants in the lake, one of the issues about lots of different entities doing water quality analysis is that those results can live in multiple locations. You can go to Big Valley's website, which is bvrancheria.com. I believe Alfred already put that in the chat. So bvrancheria.com/EPA, and it'll take you to a water quality dashboard, which has the data for Clear Lake and basically just all the different entities, whether it's USGS or irrigated agriculture or the tribes, or I don't think County of Lake had any data at that point, but basically in the Department of Water Resources, the state, and it's data from the 1950s to 2015. You can also go to the National Water Quality Portal to look at the just the information about what's happening on Clear Lake, and that's where, whether you submit your stuff to the state, your information to the state or to the feds, it ultimately makes it into that water quality portal, and I can put that link on there when I get a moment. So that's but other than that, in terms of the results from our drinking water testing, that is in the chart. That was one of my slides, and that's so you can see the nitrates and just in general, like the percentages of homes that had detects like that. We're not sharing people's private individual home results except with them, but the general statistics of it we will share.
Great, thanks. And Susan, you did mention a fact sheet, so we have that. And we will post it on our website, on our cyanobacteria page. And we will also include the links where we can, where this presentation is posted for that. I didn't know if you wanted to share it quickly right now. We're doing great on time. So if you wanted to share it now, just walk through it. If it's something interesting for folks, you can do that.
We can do that, yeah. Let me get back to sharing screen and pop that up.
And then I have one question. Karen, I see it. We'll come to you after this. So get ready with your question, and I'll unmute you here in a moment.
So this is a lot of just what we walked through, but we wanted to have a version that folks could have and consume at home and think about a little bit more. But this walks through a lot of what Sarah in particular just went through in her presentation, what our findings were in the homes tested. So we have the coliform results, fluoridone, nitrates, and cyanotoxins. And then the last page is that summary table that Sarah went over as well. So no new information, but just if you want to look at it a little bit more in detail, but not have to go through the whole recording of the presentation. So Angela will have that up on their website. And again, if you want to reach out to either Big Valley or to Tracking in California, we can send it as well.
Yeah, great for that, Susan, because I was looking, I can't share the file in our webinar here like I can in some Zooms. All right, so we do have a question from the audience. Karen, I'm going to allow you to ask your question. So go ahead and accept the unmute. There you go.
Hi, this is Scott and Karen. How you doing? So anyway, we worked with Sarah a lot this past summer, and they were super helpful. Thanks for all your help. She spent a lot of time with us on the phone and was very patient with us. So between us and our neighbors, we're very concerned about all the results, but frustrated because there's no one we can find that can recommend what we should do to our system to make the water safe. So we would be happy to pay for any modifications to our system and have them tested afterwards. Not trying to make it a model home or something, but just trying to see what we can do to help everyone out. There's 500 and some odd homes that are in roughly the same predicament as us. We all know the water's bad. So if we could find out what the recommendations are, whether we need to put the chlorine after our filtration system and then put a UV light after that, or whatever we need to do, we're happy to do it and participate in getting official samples, so it's not just us telling people how it's working out, and help everyone on the lake improve the safety of their homes. But it's frustrating right now for us and our neighbors because we all know it's bad. We're being told it's bad, that it's worse than we thought it was, but what do we do?
Great, thank you, Karen and Scott. Is there any suggestions from the panelists about what people can do for their current drinking water, private individual drinking water systems?
This is Amy. I I would really encourage you to look to see if you're near other homes and could possibly form either centralized treatment and really with a public water system nearby. Hopefully that's an available option to you. Based on the level of this source water and the intense monitoring and required to adequately treat this surface water, it is definitely recommended to go down that path. Apart from that, in the meantime, would love to see a professional do a case-by-case evaluation to get between the long-term solution and the short-term solution to really optimize your treatment and encourage folks to do some monitoring.
Thanks for that response, Amy. Yeah, I got a question earlier from someone that I wanted to bring up to the participants, and I believe you had a chart that had the different types of filter treatments that were included that you guys tested. And one of them had filter, chlorine, and ozone. And I want to clarify that ozone was also the same thing as reverse osmosis, or is that a different type of system? And I've heard several people out in the public, when we share these things or we talk about the work that you guys are doing, bring up reverse osmosis, and that's the cure-all, and that's the solution for everything. So can we just clarify that a little bit, just in context of this presentation and the particular issues that are on Clear Lake?
So ozone is a completely separate treatment from reverse osmosis. Just want to clarify that. And one of the things that shows up in that EPA guidance manual from 2006 is it's really imperative to have bacteriologically safe drinking water before you use an upstream of a reverse osmosis treatment system under the sink or any in-home treatment system under the sink. You want to make sure that's bacteriologically safe. And so I hope that addresses those concerns.
I'd like to say something about that as well. This is Sarah. An RO system that isn't maintained well is still going to potentially have problems. And even though we had participants who had ROs, if they had filters that hadn't been changed in a while, or maybe there was some, malfunctioning of their system, that I believe that's why we were able to see cyanobacteria after their RO system at their tap. So it wasn't necessarily a cure-all for the water quality issues.
And you want to make sure that the RO system is meets the NSF standard 58 and is a California registered device, to just make sure that they've been independently tested to reduce contaminants and make sure the claims are met.
Okay, thank you so much. I have one more quick question, unless I don't see anything else in the chat or from the attendees raising hands. So I have one more question for the group, and then I just wanted to remind everybody that we do have evaluation link feedback for this presentation, and also if there's anything you'd like to see in future Water Quality Wednesdays, I put that in the chat. I'll try to put it in another location, maybe in the YouTube comment section. And so I have a quick question for the group, because Amy, I saw you had a quick slide that talked about the terminology, and you called these systems self-supplied. And one thing we struggled with developing, outreach to the public for cyanobacteria was getting the terminology, the vernacular correct about it's cyanobacteria, not algae, not slime. So everybody knows what we're talking about. And I'm wondering if that's something that this group can do, because I've had trouble, I wrote a column last Sunday in Lady of the Lake, Lake County News, but I had trouble expressing exactly what these systems are called. I said small, private, individual. They've also been called very small, self-supplied, and direct. So I'm just wondering if the group has what's a term we definitely want to call these, that we can refer to them all the time from now on, so it's clear what they are and distinguishing them from the big public system. So this will be my last question comment before we adjourn today, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, group. So
this is Amy. We've been going with self-supplied systems systems, and that's fairly recent, and that's to encompass both domestic wells and the unregulated systems, those that are below 5 connections, and that includes individual intakes too.
I will just add, this is Susan, that as soon as Amy introduced our team to this term, we all adopted it immediately because it's so specific and exact and does a better job of describing what we're working with. So we really appreciate that.
And does it seem like the folks you're working with and the public understand that term and are utilizing that term and it makes sense and they can distinguish what type of system it is? Or is that something that if we all use that term now and go forward and adopt it across the board, that seems like that'll catch on, be easier to catch on?
I expect we'll be seeing when state resources are communicated, we will be using that term self-supplied systems, and time will tell whether or not it fits appropriately or not.
Great. So thank you so much. I appreciate everything from the speakers today. I have some of their contact information up on the screen right now. We are at 7 o'clock, so we are adjourning. I did just want to, again, acknowledge thanks to the county staff, Sam Houston and Matthew Rothstein, for staying late again on Wednesday to help us put this together and host it. I apologize for some of the background noise earlier. Seems like we figured out a way to solve that. We also have some Water Quality Wednesdays coming up. We don't have dates set, but we will have something from Vector Control here on Clear Lake, as well as US EPA. Those are both things that are in the docket to talk about mercury information. So those are coming up in the next few months. Again, if you want anything specific to be talked about in Water Quality Wednesday, please fill out the evaluation link that I put in the chat. You can also call us at Water Resources, 707-263-2344. You can message us directly through Facebook at Lake County Water, and we'll be able to fit that in with our Water Quality Wednesday. Thanks again so much for all the speakers. The Cow Watch Project is great. We really appreciated hearing from it today. And thank you guys, and I hope everybody has a great night.